UFC Vegas 45. Draftkings has released the salary so we can take our first look. You can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. We crushed last week. If you watched the first look and the final look, you did really well last week. People sending me messages with their winnings. I took fourth in a single entry that I was in, and you know how I do. We called a lot of what happened. There were a lot of finishes on the card. It was a crazy night of fights, but I did very well. I know a lot of you guys did very well. I'm super excited about that, and I want to carry that over into this first look. And if you've been enjoying the content at all, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. We have big plans for 2022, changes that are going to be coming to the way that I bring this to you, and I want you guys to be along for the ride. So please like, subscribe, and also comment who your favorite play is this week. I'd love to know. This is the first look, so we're going to go over the slate fighter by fighter, salary by salary, talk about spots that we like and spots that we don't like. The most expensive fighter is Amanda Lemos. She's $9,500, and she's fighting Angela Hill this week. Lemos has looked good in the UFC, especially when she knocked out Montserrat Ruiz with one punch while sliding backwards. First round finishes aren't uncommon for her. She's done it in 3 out of her 4 UFC wins. And we know that a first round finish scores us a minimum of 90 points on Draftkings, so that's something that we're always looking out for. Lemos has serious power for the weight class, and I could see her hurting Angela Hill, maybe even knocking her down early and then finishing her a little bit later in the first round. And I say that she might get knocked down because Angela Hill is tough. She's been fighting for a long time and she's seen it all. And veterans in this game can be hard to put away. They stick around for a long time, and there are reasons for that. But even with her savvy and toughness, I still like Lemos to get it done inside the first round this week. I'm normally not all that high in the most expensive fighter on the slate, but this looks like a situation where she's probably going to show up on the optimal lineup because of that finishing upside. And what's more, being that it's a women's MMA fight and she's as expensive as she is, she might even come in at lower ownership, so that could be a possible leverage spot for you. The pick is Amanda Lemos inside the first round. Justin Tafa is $9,400. This price for Justin Tafa stinks. It stinks because it has less to do with his ability and more to do with how bad Harry Hansucker is. But Justin Tafa is 1-3 in the UFC, with his losses coming to Jared Vanderaa, Carlos Felipe, and Yorgan De Castro. It's not exactly elite heavyweight company. And now he's fighting another guy who's at the very bottom of the division in Harry Hansucker. And we should expect Hansucker to get knocked out, but I don't know if I like that idea. I just can't trust somebody like Justin Tafa with my money. You're basically paying $9,400 for him to land a lucky punch, because it's not like Justin Tafa's this slick striker. He's a brawler, and if he doesn't land that one shot, Harry Hansucker might stick around. And I also think that if this fight hits the ground and Hansucker's on top, the fight's over. Right now, tentatively for me, the pick for this fight is Harry Hansucker, and we'll talk about him a little later. At $9,300, we have Raoni Barcelos. He's welcoming Victor Henry into the UFC. I got Raoni Barcelos all day long. Unfortunately for Victor Henry, his first day at the job is against this monster. Barcelos is very good everywhere. He's got power in both hands, strong offensive wrestling, and killer instinct when the finish presents itself. His last fight with Timur Valiev didn't go his way, but it was a split decision. It could have gone either way, but I like that he lost that for this fight at least. It tells him you can't leave it to the judges. You have to make a statement. You have to finish this fight. This guy has a championship level skill set, but he's in the stacked 135 division at 34 years old, coming off of a loss. He has to do something spectacular, and his window is closing if he has his eyes on that gold. So Barcelos has high finishing upside this week. The pick is Raoni Barcelos inside the distance. Next, we have Ricky Simón at $9,200. He's fighting Rafael Assunção this week, and normally when we play DraftKings, we're looking for one of two things: high finishing upside, or somebody who's going to secure a lot of takedowns. Ricky Simón tends to go to decision, but his takedowns are money in the bank. He's averaging nearly 7 takedowns per fight. That kind of offensive wrestling provides a very safe floor for us on DraftKings, which makes him a great play this week. On top of that, Ricky Simón's only 29, so he's still learning, he's still maturing and growing as a fighter. Rafael Assunção, on the other hand, is 39 years old. He's on a 3-fight losing streak, and he hasn't fought in 18 months. He was supposed to fight twice this year, both in February and July, and pulled out of both of those. So you clearly have two fighters that are at very different stages of their career. One is a young fighter with a nice record who's making his way through the ranks and reaching his prime. The other is a fighter that's well past his prime, who's just looking for a few more fights to be able to make a little bit more money before hanging up the gloves for good. The pick for me is Ricky Simone. He's going to score a ton of takedowns to get you a nice score on DraftKings. It's probably going to be a decision, but those takedowns, again, present a very high floor for Ricky Simone. Stephen Thompson is 9,100. He's fighting Belal Muhammad this week. This looks like a classic Wonderboy decision win. He's going to win the striking exchanges, no question about it. And Belal Muhammad doesn't really have the power on the feet to earn Wonderboy's respect, so he's probably just going to get picked apart from the outside. But I will say I don't like Wonderboy as a DraftKings pick. I'm very confident that Wonderboy wins this fight, but there are a few reasons why I'm staying off of him on DraftKings. First, I expect him to be high-owned. He's in the co-main event. He's the favorite. I expect him to be high-owned. Second, I don't see him finishing Belal Muhammad just because of how tough Belal is, so that kind of limits that upside. And third, if Belal Muhammad does have any success in this fight, it's going to be him pushing Wonderboy up against the fence, slowing down the pace, nullifying some of that striking that's coming back his way. Those are going to be the minutes that he wins. So I expect a slower pace to this fight. I don't expect this to post a great DraftKings score if Wonderboy wins. The pick is Wonderboy, but I'm going to be staying away from this one. Next, we have Gerald Mearshart. He's 9,000. And this has got to be the most expensive GM3 has ever been on DraftKings. You're really paying a premium for this guy this week, but I actually do think it's justified. He's fighting Dustin Stolfus, who is 0-2 in the UFC. Now, those losses are to Kyle Daukaus and Rodolfo Vieira, but Gerald Mearshart is more accomplished than both of those fighters, and I think that Dustin Stolfus slides to 0-3 in the UFC after Saturday night. I say that because his method of victory typically is to submit his opponent, but he's not going to do that to Gerald Mearshart. Gerald Mearshart has 25 submission wins on his record, and I actually think that he adds to that tally this week. His last fight against Mahmoud Muradov was slate-breaking, and his fight right before that against Bartosz Favinsky, he put up a nice score as well. When you look at the level of experience, talent, and competition that GM3 has faced versus who he faces now, this should be a walk in the park. The pick for this fight is Gerald Mearshart by submission. Next is Charles Jourdain at 8,900. He's fighting Andre Ewell this week, who's making his debut at this weight class. Both of these men have struggled in their last few fights, so it is difficult to feel confident on either side of this one. What I like about Jourdain is we have seen flashes from him in the past where he's looked real sharp and capable, but he hasn't had a good run in the UFC, winning just 2 of his 6 fights. And if you look at his losses, they're typically against longer, rangier fighters. Julian Erosa, Andre Fili, Josh Culibao, and Des Green all had reach advantages over Jourdain. Enter Andre Ewell. Ewell does give up 1 inch in height, but has a 6-inch reach advantage in this spot, which makes him look really tempting this week. Jourdain doesn't have great striking defense, and he's never recorded a takedown in the UFC. Andre Ewell seems to have issues with physicality, and when fights are a little dirtier, a little grittier, he doesn't like a dogfight. Andre Ewell wants to have a clean type of kickboxing match, and he's in luck. He's got a good dance partner. Charles Jourdain's looking to do the same thing. The pick for me in this fight is Andre Ewell, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. Cub Swanson is 8,800. He's a 2-1 favorite. A lot of money's coming in on him, and I don't know if I'm missing something. He's fighting Darren Elkins this week, and it looks like a terrible matchup for Cub Swanson. I think Swanson is the better striker, and he has a more diverse attack on the feet, but that's it. I give the cardio, wrestling, and toughness advantage to Darren Elkins. There's a lot being made of the punishment that Darren Elkins has taken in his career, but Cub hasn't been unscathed either. He's been in the WEC and UFC for nearly 15 years, fighting guys like Jens Pulver, Jose Aldo, Chad Mendez. More recently, guys like Frankie Edgar, Doo-Ho Choi, Max Holloway, Brian Ortega. Fighting the best of the best for 15 years straight can take a toll on your body. Plus, Cub Swanson's the older fighter here, just by a little bit, but he's 38 years old. I could see him having success in this fight early, but just like any Darren Elkins fight, the dirtier it gets, the longer it goes, the worse off it is for his opponent. The pick for me this week is The Damage, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. Sijara Eubanks is 8,700. She's fighting Melissa Gatto. Sijara Eubanks is a strong grappler with a lot of UFC experience. Money has been coming in on her since the line opened, and I would imagine a lot of it has to do with that UFC experience. But I have a few issues with her this week. She's 11 years older than her opponent. She typically has a hard time with the weight cuts, and if she isn't at a grappling advantage, then what does she have? On the other side, you have Melissa Gatto, who's 25 years old, never lost, already has a win in the UFC, so the UFC debut jitters won't be there, and is the last person to beat Carol Hoza, who hasn't lost in the UFC. Now, Eubanks is coming off of a win over Elise Reed, who was stepping in on short notice and was way undersized for that fight. Gatto, on the other hand, is going to be at a slight height and reach advantage, and I like her in this spot. The pick for me is Melissa Gatto, and I know what you're thinking. 3 underdogs in a row? It's a fight night card. A lot of close matchups typically on a card like this, so don't be surprised if a lot of underdogs hit this week. Dontel Mays is 8,600. He's fighting Josh Parisian in what I expect to be a very slow, sloppy, heavyweight fight. Dontel Mays has been unlucky with his matchmaking being booked against Cyril Gane in his UFC debut, and then following that up with a fight against Alan Nascimento. He did pick up a win over Roque Martinez, but he didn't look great. If I expected him to knock out Josh Parisian in the first round, or really at all, I think 8,600 would be a justifiable price, but I don't think that's going to happen. I expect him to win. I expect him to outpoint Josh Parisian, but I don't expect him to score a whole lot of points. I think it's going to be a relatively low output decision win for Dontel Mays. Parisian has looked terrible. I don't know if there's any fighters in the heavyweight division that I would pick him to win against. The pick is Dontel Mays, but I'm fading this one entirely. At 8,500, we have Mateusz Gamrot. He's fighting Diego Ferreira. Gamer Gamrot is going to come in at high ownership, but he probably should. Diego Ferreira is a dangerous guy, but he's well past his prime. Mateusz Gamrot is really just reaching that point of his career. Ferreira missed weight by nearly 5 pounds in his last fight and was finished on the ground by Gregor Gillespie. It always makes you nervous when you see a fighter miss weight because the first fight is the one that they have with the scale. When they lose that one, it makes it hard for you to want to bet them once they step into that octagon. As for Gamrot, he's looked phenomenal. He ran through Jeremy Stephens and Scott Holtzman in his last 2 fights. He lost his UFC debut. There was some controversy around the decision, but he lost, and honestly, we like that. He's now not worried about preserving some kind of perfect record, and I think we saw evidence of that in his last 2 fights. He's just letting it all go. He has several paths to victory in this one, and that's why I think that he's one of the best plays on the slate. The pick is Mateusz Gamrot inside the distance. Raquel Pennington is 8,400. She's fighting Macy Chasson this week. Pennington looked strong in her last fight against Pani Kianzad earlier this year. She was able to control her with her physicality, basically keep her up against the fence, and win these exchanges inside the clinch. She should be the stronger fighter in this one as well, but I could see her having some issues with distance management. Macy Chasson is going to have a 4-inch height advantage and a 4.5-inch advantage in reach. If this is at range, Pennington could get picked apart. But if she closes distance, I could see Pennington having the advantage in the clinch. Very close fight either way. I do think that it's going to go the distance. These fighters tend to keep it on the feet and want to trade, so I don't expect a whole lot of points to come from this one. Pick for this one is actually unknown. I don't have a pick for this one. I'm going to have to look into this deeper and then give you my pick on the final look. Chris Daukaus is 8,300, one half of the main event, and Chris Daukaus has been on fire in the UFC, picking up 4 early finishes in his first 4 fights. This will be a massive step up in competition for him as he's fighting the Black Beast. Outside of Francis Ngannou, nobody has one-shot knockout power like Derek Lewis does. He only needs to be perfect for 1 second for this fight to be over, but I don't think that Chris Daukaus is going to give him that opportunity. The difference maker for me is the combination striking from Chris Daukaus. Most heavyweights wait for a big shot, then they step off and wait, try to set up another one, big shot, step back and wait. Daukaus, on the other hand, is throwing punches in bunches, not putting everything into his shots, but sitting down when he needs to. I can see him landing a 1-2 on Lewis. Lewis tries to return fire with a hook. Chris Daukaus hits him with a pull counter and then lands a flurry of strikes that ends the night for Derek Lewis. Daukaus can also end up being good leverage for the main event. I could see most of the field playing Derek Lewis because of that high finishing upside, and Chris Daukaus coming in at low ownership as a result. Being the favorite in the main event is going to drive his ownership up a little bit, but I don't expect it to be higher than Derek Lewis's. The pick for me is Chris Daukaus by knockout. Jordan Leavitt is fighting Matt Sales. Now, he's 8,200, Matt Sales is 8,000. This 8,200 to 8,000 range, we got to get it right. This is a striker versus grappler matchup. If Levitt can have the fight his way, he's going to be able to get Sayles down early and submit him. If Matt Sayles can keep the fight standing, he's going to win. Jordan Levitt gassed hard against Claudio Puelles in his last fight, and his striking looked terrible. At 26 years old, we expect him to be getting better at this part of his game, but it's hard to adapt to taking a punch without that real experience. Matt Sayles is going to be that real experience. He's explosive and carries solid power in his hands, and normally I back the fighter with the grappling advantage, but for Jordan Levitt, his striking is so behind the other parts of his game that it's hard to bet him with any confidence. Matt Sayles at 8,000 looks like the correct play in this range. I expect him to spark Jordan Levitt on the feet early, and I don't expect Jordan Levitt to recover very quickly, so the finish is going to be available. I just hope he doesn't overextend himself, get too excited looking for the finish, and allow himself to be taken down. The best thing that he can do is stick behind a jab, not throw many kicks, stay low to defend the takedowns. Outside of that, he doesn't have to worry about anything that Jordan Levitt's offering on the feet. The pick for me is Matt Sayles by knockout. Derek Lewis is 7,900. Look, I'm not trying to disrespect the knockout king. He could knock Chris Daukaus out with one shot, of course, but I would hate to be in a position where I'm waiting for him to land that one shot. Derek Lewis is he was losing until he won kind of guy, and it's hard for me to back that against somebody who's extremely hot like Chris Daukaus is right now. Again, I expect a lot of people to get here at 7,900, but not me. Gracie Chasson is 7,800. I'm not looking to play her in this spot, but she is a viable option below 8,000. I'm not that high on Raquel Pennington, and if I did have to take a shot on this fight, it would probably be on the longer, rangier Macy Chasson. Diego Ferreira is 7,700. He actually is worth looking at because if he does win, he's going to be the ultimate leverage play. A lot of the field is going to be on Gamrot. If you're playing larger field stuff, you might want to put him in some of your lineups just for that leverage, but if you're playing small field, single entry, 3 max tournaments, I wouldn't recommend playing him. There's other options at this low price range, so you don't have to go here. Josh Parisian at 7,600, I'm not interested. Melissa Gatto at 7,500. Listen, women's MMA continues to be faded on DraftKings, and it continues to show up on the optimal lineup. Like we said before, Gatto is a solid play this week. Good size for the division, still very young for this game, and if she's not out-grappled, I think that she has a really good chance of winning this fight. Darren Elkins is 7,400. The Damage should change his name to The Leverage, because that's what he's going to be this week. A lot of people are going to be on Cub Swanson, enticed by the name, and they're going to overlook Darren Elkins. And I love the output, the toughness, and the offensive wrestling that he brings to the table. Darren Elkins is going to be shooting for takedowns. I could see him getting one up against the cage. Cub gets up, he remats him, gets up, remats him, starts stacking up these takedowns and puts a grueling pace on him. And that's the kind of fight that Darren Elkins wants. That's the kind of fight that Darren Elkins wins. Give me Darren Elkins this week at 7,400. Andre Ewell at 7,300 looks very interesting to me. I love that he's moving up to 145. That looks like where he belongs. Hopefully that extra weight is going to help him get a little bit more pop on his shot so he can maximize that huge reach advantage that he's going to have in this spot. I expect him to win a decision. I would be surprised if he finished Jordan. I really would be. A decision at this price, if he throws enough strikes, he'll pay off his salary. So give me Andre Ewell this week. Dustin Stolfus at 7,200. I'm not interested. Bilal Muhammad is 7,100, and I feel bad for going against Bilal Muhammad, but his style of fight just doesn't work against somebody like Wonderboy. It is going to be in the Apex, so they have that smaller cage, but I still think that the lateral movement and the output of Wonderboy is going to keep him at bay and make it so that he can't secure these takedowns and get the kind of fight that he wants. So I'm not really interested in Bilal Muhammad, but I did want to talk about him just because he is the most talented fighter in this price range, but I don't see myself getting to him this week. Rafael Sunsao, I'm not interested. Victor Henry, I'm not interested. Harry Hansucker at 6,900. You may call me crazy, but I like him this week. Justin Tafa is just not a good fighter. He has power for the first round, but he's just not a good fighter. And neither is Harry Hansucker, but at least he's more experienced. You look at their amateur and pro fights, Tafa's fought a total of 8 times, Hunsucker's fought a total of 21. The last thing I'll say about this is Hunsucker probably does have the grappling advantage. 5 of his 7 wins has come by way of submission, so he might be able to get this fight to the ground, finish Justin Tafa on the ground. I just wouldn't, again, play Justin Tafa at the price range that he is. So give me Harry Hunsucker this week. Angela Hill, not interested. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Like the video, comment on it, who your favorite play is this week. I'd love to know. And be sure to subscribe to the channel. That way I can bring more of this to you.